Yep. This is what you need. Yep. Yeah, I care about you. Yep. Yeah, we're going to be friends. So stay tuned. So excited you're with me today. You people that just get after it, we are in kinship because we are, even though life sometimes presses in and it is hard, you are the ones that get after it. You press in, you get back up after you fall down, after life knocks you down, you get up. You are the inspiration, and we are about moving forward, moving ahead, getting rid of baggage. And I can't tell you how much joy it brings me to come to you and to chat with you. Know that you're out there. Know that whether you are a person of faith and you're praying, or you're just a person sending good vibes, I so appreciate that. And I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving holiday. I had a great Thanksgiving holiday, and I'm really grateful because I did not overeat. I enjoyed some really good food. We had prime rib, and my daughter smoked a turkey. Elizabeth smoked a turkey. That girl, man, she has got some kind of talent. And we just hung out with our family because, right, we are all obeying the COVID rules wherever you may be. And this podcast is heard all over the world and is listened to all over the world by people that are high performers. And gosh, high performers are courageous because we have to go after things in our lives that sometimes they're hard and we don't like to look at them, and we're able to look in the mirror and we're able to go after them because we want to improve, and we let nothing stand in the way of getting to better relationships and a better quality of life, because it is about your satisfaction in life, which is directly connected with the satisfaction that people have around you with their relationship with you, and how you feed into them living the best life possible. So I just hope on this Thanksgiving holiday, and you guys know that it's been a tough couple weeks for me, and even this morning I woke up and our fridge is going making this horrid noise. And so, I go upstairs and I watch a YouTube video, and I come downstairs, it isn't making a noise. So at this point, I don't know if it's permanently broke or if it actually fixed itself, but I am in here doing a podcast because this is what I love, and you are the ones I love to connect with. Anyway, I was on this line of thought of Thanksgiving. One of the most powerful things about Thanksgiving, wherever you fall, and if you're not in the States, then Thanksgiving doesn't mean a heck of a lot to you, but it can. Not in a historical sense, but in a sense, the power of giving gratitude and thanks for the good things and the opportunities you have, and even the challenges, because challenges help define us, and challenges can really be powerful in our lives if we work through them and we make it through them. So I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. And hey, you can visit my website at yup.solutions. And so not .com, .solutions. And basically what we have up there is the podcast player and a lot of blatant plugs to support me without getting anything back. And hopefully that will change soon. But I care about you, and I have invested a lot of money to improve the sound quality and try to bring you the best product possible, and always trying to improve my skills. One of the things you realize, and I joke about it, I'm a redneck, and often my mind gets ahead of my mouth, and yeah, I miss words, or I miss thoughts, or I'm on to the next thought, and you're just like, Tom, where are you? Or Tom just has like a total train wreck, and he just totally loses his thoughts because he looks at himself on the YouTube video recording, and he totally gets distracted like I'm doing now. I've got to stay focused, but totally always trying to improve, and I think I've talked about this, and I listened to this podcast webinar where this guy talked about starting dirty, and it's like, you just start. You get it figured out as you go along, and oftentimes you can't see the next step, because the next step is over this little hump in your journey. And until you walk up to that hump or over that hill, you can't see where the journey is going to take you. And so oftentimes we never start things because we're not going to get it perfect. And you just go back and listen to the early podcasts. And even this podcast, you're just like, Tom, I'm not what I was, and I'm always improving. And my learning curve, I feel like, is so steep. But there's a difference in what Tom's doing now and what Tom was doing before. Tom was doing nothing. Tom is doing things now. Tom is learning. Yeah, you like how I talk about myself. It is good for me to reflect on myself and look back because you guys, sometimes I get really, really discouraged. I mean, I have mostly up days, but there are those days that it's like, why am I doing it? Tom, you're such a dork. And when I come in here and I got nothing and I try to slug it out and I do like 5 takes on the same thing, and it just, I talk myself into a corner, it gets really discouraging. And so, but I'm doing it. And that's what I remind myself, that I'm doing it. And every day that I do it, and every episode that I do, I improve, I learn a little more, and I get a little more foothold, and hopefully passing on information to you that makes a difference. I know that this information has made a difference in my life and my family's life. And so I know that this stuff works. If you're thinking I just pull it out of thin air, I absolutely don't. I reflect on my life. I reflect on my relationships. I talk to my wife about what works, what doesn't work. And I hope you guys have enjoyed when I've had her on. I think I'm going to have her on again, maybe the next podcast episode or two. We just celebrated our 31st anniversary, and just like to talk kind of the down and dirty of marriage, and how do you stay married? That's probably one of the biggest challenges. Is if you stay married, how do you stay happy? So anyway, super long intro today. I tell you, I appreciate you. And if you're thinking about starting something, doing something, it doesn't matter what it is. I'll just give you a couple tips right now. It's not going to be perfect. And if it is perfect, well, congratulations. And that's awesome. And that's really rare. And I would imagine in a month or a few weeks, you probably won't think it's perfect, but you got to start walking to figure out the next steps. And never, never erase, destroy, discard, burn anything you've done, because it is a point of reflection that helps you as you're moving ahead. And those days you get really discouraged and you go back and realize where you started and where you are now. It is a huge point of encouragement. And yes, are you where somebody else is? Absolutely not, because we all have different starting places, and some people get a huge advantage. Does that mean we shouldn't start? Absolutely not. We should always start, because there is something in each of us that the world wants. And so today I want to approach this topic because I become keenly aware of this topic quite often. And it is reminded to me often when I look in the mirror or I reflect on what I've done. And it is the power of being flawed. You're like, click. See you later, Tom. Not interested in this episode. Not interested in going there. Well, why would I talk about being flawed? Because every one of us in some degree, and I don't care how much time and effort you put in, and maybe you've dealt with a lot of your flaws, but we all have some to some degree. And as we go after them and as we deal with them, the flaws become less and less. But let me just tell you, if a computer paints a painting and a computer does it perfectly, or plays something like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and it plays it very analytically. Now, AI has become pretty smart, and it has learned human behavior. But let's talk about just data set computers that are just looking at the data and playing it, and there's no embellishment on that. When you look at a painting or you listen to something that's played by an orchestra, a computer maybe would define it as flawed, but the characteristics and the embellishments and the difference and the emphasis that are in the different places and the brushstrokes that maybe go different directions or counterintuitive add a characteristic that appeals to us. Yes, flaws appeal to people. Now, blatant flaws oftentimes are really awkward, but people don't necessarily, and you probably will argue with me to some degree, but they don't like perfection. Now, people maybe like things in the way that they prefer them, but it's not necessarily perfect. It's still flawed, but it's in the way that they enjoy it. And really, what is perfection? And you guys know that I'm a man of faith. And so in history, there has only been one perfect man in regards to doing everything right all the time, and that was Jesus. And what was the response to Jesus? Was to kill him. And so if your desire really is perfection, it probably and not everyone wanted to kill them, and there was a plan behind it, and it's probably not the best analogy, but it is that when Jesus was right and he answered the people in power then and angered them, And people don't necessarily like it when you're always right. And it's why I let my flaws really hang out. And it's why when I do this podcast and I do my other podcasts, I remember when I first did my podcast, I edited like every breath, every like mistake out, and they sounded so awful. And one of my friends, Shannon, she's like, "You don't even laugh. I want to hear your laugh. I want to hear you." What are those things? Those are flaws and imperfections. When I miss words or I mispronounce words or I get ahead of myself, there's something in each one of us that relates to that. And we're all varying in the degrees of polish we like. And sometimes we like really polished, but there are times, and I think it's especially when we broach the really hard subjects, the things that we are failing at desperately. Like I've met, and I'm just going to go here for a while. And this is a subject that I will eventually approach on the podcast because it affects a lot of people, men, women, teenagers, and children. But it is men that are very successful, very high performers, and from all like exterior things, they're slim, they're trim, they're fit. They have a huge thing out of order in their life. They have a sex addiction, which is generally connected to pornography. And you guys know me and you see me, I try to be presentable, but I'm a little redneck. I don't dress up. I don't often wear button up shirts. I'm not necessarily clean shaven. I have some degree of 5 o'clock to 10 to 12 day shadow. And so these men on a level that, otherwise, I would never connect with them. When I share or I open up the conversation and I really show my flawed side and I share when I was younger, my struggles in that area and some influences that came from early childhood that affected me. And as I worked through those struggles, and I didn't keep them secret, that it's just like, oh no, I'm perfect. I've never dealt with that thing that almost every man deals with, because if they don't, they're probably freaking lying through their teeth. And Tom, why do you say that? I'm going to take a little side note here before I get back into the flawed thing. But most men suck at relationships. So when they first meet a woman, it's great and they're happy and they're having a lot of sex. But long-term, men generally suck at relationships. And if you don't build a good relationship with a woman, that aspect, that sexual aspect of your relationship will become diminished, if not shut down. And men oftentimes are, all right, guys, a little on the arrogant side or unwilling to be learned. And so they'll either just live in this cold relationship and then they'll move into these addictions because your hormones are your hormones, okay? And you need to satisfy them some way. And I'm not saying it's a healthy way. The best way would be to use that struggle as inspiration to further your relationship skills and build those relationships with your partner so you could restore that, but shortcut it and get these addictions. And so by me sharing my flawed state and sharing the struggles, all of a sudden, these men, which I would have nothing in common with, I have a place to speak. And thank God, because man of faith comment there. So beep if you're not, or beep, I should listen and pay attention to that man of faith comment there, right? Yes, you should, because faith is a really good thing. So you like my sound effect there. Kind of fun. But I have a place to speak and share. And when I do a podcast on that issue, pornography and sexual addiction, I'll share with you some of the things, but how to get out of that, how to begin to be free, because there becomes an intense bondage in that. But through my flawed state and sharing my flawed state and sharing my vulnerabilities, I'm able to help someone get free of huge chains and huge bondages. Years ago, and this is kind of a faith thing, but some of you may have dealt with this, but there are a lot of people in the faith community, even outside the faith community, that have this sense. And all I can speak to it is a sense. And if you're out there, you'll get this and you'll relate to this, but that there is some deep, dark blackness in their soul. And they can't remember what it is, but they can feel that it's there and it haunts them. And especially if they're a person of faith, it always causes them to doubt how genuine their relationships is, this deep, dark place. And I've talked about this. I believe I've talked about it on the Yup podcast, but for sure the Sanguine podcast. But it's this deep, dark place. And there's this sense inside of yourself don't talk about that. And yeah, we don't even really want to bring it up in our own consciousness, but it kind of surfaces at really odd times. And I could talk about the source, but I'm not going to. The reality is that it was really real for me, and I felt a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of insecurity over this. And I finally said, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to bring this thing to light. And if someone like says, oh, yeah, this is what it is, and, made it public, and I shared it, and I realized that it was a falsehood. And I don't know why my psyche, or if you're on the spiritual side, what forces set it up, but it kept me in bondage. So I brought my flawed, what I viewed this dark thing that haunted me, into the light. Guess what happened? People have come out of the woodwork. Oh my gosh, Tom, I have that same feeling. Oh my gosh. And, and shared it with me. And we brought it into the light and it died. There are so many things like this. And in our society, it's probably one of my things that just gets me is that everybody puts a front on of, I got this. Yeah, I got this. I just realized that I did not hit the record button on my soundboard. So this is going to be a YouTube video that we are going to steal the sound from, and we are going to bring it into the audio version because I can't steal the audio clip out of there. And so that's great. And so, yeah, today is a Monday. And so welcome to my flawed Monday. Tom did not put press the record button on the audio. And so those of you that are out there and you're thinking you want to start podcasting and you're doing it and you have a day like me, don't lose it. Because you know what else happens with flaws? You figure things out and you overcome it. So I just forgot to push the record button on the Rodecaster. I've got it on YouTube. And so we're doing great. And so the solution is, and when you're flawed, you often have to be pretty resourceful to find solutions. So, and this isn't all that resourceful. I'm going to pull the audio from the video and put it into the podcast, and that's going to be fine. It's going to be great. Is it a little disappointing? Of course, it's disappointing, but you can learn from me. You just get back up and you keep doing it. Now, one of the things of being flawed too is you don't fear failing so much. And you realize that you do have flaws and that you're going to fail. And that flaws and failure are the steps to becoming greater, having more knowledge, having more skill, and being more proficient. Because every time, nobody likes to fail and nobody likes to have flaws. So what do? You redouble your efforts. You retry again. You go and analyze, and you're like, how can I prevent doing that? And so flaws are hugely powerful. And the other thing about flaws is I realized that I'm not good at a lot of things. And now this took quite a while for me to figure out. Well, I figured out I wasn't good at things. The solution to not being good at things took a long time because I spent a lot of time of just banging my head and being super frustrated. And so it is once you become okay and you realize that you have flaws, and you're not necessarily accepting of the flaws, but that you're gonna have flaws, is that, and you don't necessarily want to keep them, you want to deal with them, and we want to continue to be better. But one of the benefits is that I ask for help. There are some things that I don't have enough time for, and you're just like, maybe, Tom, that's not necessarily a flaw. And you're probably right. I believe I should be good at everything. That is totally impossible. And that is what I'm realizing is I'm not going to be good at everything. And so it's asking for help. So like when the sound quality on my podcast was really sucking and I wanted to up the game and I wanted to get rid of that big ball that I had that you guys saw, and I wanted to be able to do some interviews and add some things, I realized, Tom, you have no idea about this stuff. And you don't really want to have that much of an idea about stuff. I want to know enough to be proficient. And yeah, I viewed it as a flaw. You maybe viewed it as you're just lacking the knowledge. And so I texted a really good friend. I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. What do you got for me? And so when you realize that you don't have everything figured out, and maybe it's not flawed, I kind of like that word, but flawed implies an inherent, like, oh, an inherent defect, right? And that's not necessarily true because we're not defective, but I like flawed because in our society, everything has to be clean and packaged, and we got to put this really polished front on. So it appears that we have nothing out of order and that we're not defective. And honestly, behind the most polished people are some of the most profound flaws. Okay. They would call it ugliness. And yeah, you could call it ugliness, dysfunction. I have seen behind this, what would you say, the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. I have seen the truth of these polished lifestyles. And boy, I don't know that I've seen one where there aren't some just tremendous things. And it seems like the more work that goes on the polish, the less work that actually goes on the trying to fix or learn or cultivate character from these issues. And eventually these things explode and often hurt like tons of people around. And so in the society where we're called to have this beautiful package that I don't ever want to present that beautiful package. I want to be highly relatable. And when you have an issue that I can speak to, I hope that you find me that person that you find practical and probably has dealt with your issue or is dealing with your issue so we can have some camaraderie around that issue. Yes, I have dealt with relationship issues. Yes, I have dealt with sexual addiction issues. Yes, I have dealt with pornography. Yes, I have dealt with obsessive compulsive behavior. Yes, I have dealt with my mind not being able to shut off and I stay awake at night. Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. I am a highly flawed person, but every flaw, as it gets sewn up and healed, becomes a point of strength. And it also becomes a point of leverage where I can help someone else. I can share what either someone else shared with me. And often that's true. And you guys, we've talked about my dad who passed in September. So much of these great things that I've learned came from watching, observing, and some of the words that my dad said, but actions speak louder than words. And so my dad was a huge, powerful point. And there were other fathers that were brought into my life, fathers and men that give really good guidance and mentorship. And so often, older men in my life that would give guidance and input and help me through those flawed states. And so, as you're maybe getting discouraged, or maybe you're just ignoring some things, you have some huge things out of order in your life. And doubtful that, well, you never know, right? Sometimes we are blind to those things around us. And I'm always super grateful when my wife, Adrienne, brings things to light that I have oversaw or I've been overlooking or new things that have come up for me to address to become better. And so the power of being flawed. For one, you're so approachable. Two, you're human. You're not a machine. You don't always get it right. And your uniqueness is your beauty. And three, you get the opportunity to realize that you can't get everything figured out. So you get the opportunity to ask for help. What a powerful opportunity. If you have not discovered it, and so many people out there think asking for help is a sign of weakness. In this man's book right here, that is a point of strength. And if you ask for help, I have so much admiration for you. I had a friend recently, tell me that he got a DUI. And I was so proud of him coming up to me and telling me, and we talked about his experience, and we just talked a little bit about how it's a leverage point, and he was definitely going to use it as a leverage point to improve his life. So often there are DUIs out there all the time, and nobody knows about them. We keep them hidden because it's a point of vulnerability, and it's a flaw, right? It is a flaw. It is a dysfunction. It is something. And is he going to tell the whole world? No. But I am a person that he chose to tell, and I feel very privileged that he chose to tell me, and I am going to be there for him when he needs it. And as a man of faith, am I praying for him? I'm absolutely praying for him. And yeah, keeping him in my thoughts, texting to see how he's doing. And so look at your flaws. Don't just get discouraged about your flaws. There are points of transition and strength that you can build, and let them hang out there. It welcomes. Some people will be deterred, right? Probably don't need those people because you want to make a difference. And so as your flaws are out there, people have the same ones. I know you don't believe me, but just try it. You're gonna be really, really surprised at how many other people are dealing with or have dealt with what you're dealing with or have dealt with. it's going to blow you away. So embrace your flaws. Don't necessarily become comfortable with them. As you can see, this redneck, I'm working really hard to keep my train of thought and my words together. I'm not just embracing those flaws. And yeah, I try to look presentable, and you may see me improve in wearing shirts, but part of me always wants to be relatable to you. And I think there are different ways that I can do that and still look nice. And so we will be experimenting and moving in those directions. And as I'm working on my podcast studio, my camper, you're going to see some improvements there as trying to provide a better environment quality. So you're not looking at my like disco shirt and Adrian scarves and the things in the closet, but this is what it is now. And we're starting dirty and we're getting after it. And so don't become comfortable with your flaws, but be comfortable with being relatable and not always getting it right. And you will become approachable. I'm sure that you already are. And we're always working in degrees and becoming more approachable, becoming more high performers. So, hey, sorry that we didn't get it through the interface this week, the Rodecaster Pro interface, but my phone has a pretty decent mic. And so we'll just transfer that and we'll catch you next week. Hey, look for, I'm going to put some videos of my camper up on the solution. What is, Tom is going to have to share in the show notes what my YouTube channel is, because I don't even know. I think if you search Yup, it will come up. And so do that. But video of my camper and this video. And so, hey, I so appreciate you. You guys go out there, make a difference. Why? Because I got you. I do. I got you.